Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 13, Episode 12. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Glad you guys are back with us here for this Wednesday Steelers Nation. Dave, a lot going on in the Pittsburgh Steelers world as they have wrapped up their Week 2 game against Jacksonville. We've gone through that tape, and now they'll get ready for their finale this Sunday versus Detroit in Pittsburgh. Roster moves to be made, 85 to 80 were the cut downs, and definitely some surprising names there. So a lot to talk about today. Should note we are recording this here late on Tuesday, and so if any breaking news happens from now until Wednesday when you're listening to this, that is the reason why it was not covered. With all that out of the way, Dave, how you doing?
Doing good. Getting ready for the newest episode of Hard Knocks tonight, and I will be watching that as soon as I get this podcast put together as soon as we're done tonight. But I know we got a lot to cover. Got some roster projections in here, roster moves that the team made earlier today, so not a lack of things to talk about this evening.
Yep, we are staying busy. All right, Dave, let's get into the big news of Tuesday. The Steelers, along with the rest of the NFL, had to trim their roster by 5 from 85 to 80 by 4 p.m., and Pittsburgh complied with some surprising names as part of the releases. I'll go through the names here of the 5 who were released/waived was quarterback Chris Oladokun, running back Mateo Durant, wide receiver Christian Blake, kicker Nick Skiba, and outside linebacker Genard Avery. Avery and Oladokun being the two most surprising/notable names on this list. Durant, Blake, and Skiba, much less so. And so, at first the news of Oladokun's release was announced and reported, and there was the big, talk about that. And then Avery came in right after that, and the big discussion about how in the world did Avery get released. So take your pick. Which guy do you want to focus on first, Oladokun or Avery?
Yeah, let's go with your hot button first, because I think the Avery one, I mean, they're both probably going to be kind of lengthy discussions here. But look, here's the thing. He was destined to get cut, but you didn't kind of think maybe that wouldn't happen until the final round of cuts there. They weren't going to keep 4 quarterbacks. We know that. And I know this has been, you're a hotter hot button with you than has been with me. But it's not so much that a 7th round draft pick was cut or will be cut or would be cut, eventually cut, however you want to frame this. It's more the fact that, I mean, he didn't really get to do it. You drafted a guy to be the water boy out there for the most part. And you could have spent that pick on, and the pushback on this is, it's only a 7th round draft pick, and hardly ever any of these 7th round draft picks turn out. Okay, that is documented, and percentage wise, it's true, but you don't get a chance if you don't take the shot at that. And this team, right now, obviously could have been an edge rusher, an offensive lineman, either a guard or a tackle, or heck, even a center for that matter. Maybe a running back later. That Pacheco out of what was it? Rutgers, right?
Looking good in KC right now.
Looking real good in Kansas City. And he was drafted after Oladokun. So I know it's a hot button with you. So, and I know you've covered again, but covered it before. Why don't you cover it one more time so people realize that you're not recording this while standing on the hot metal bridge or anything like that.
Well, I am, in fact. That might be a breeze, some wind you're hearing in the background. No, I'm going to turn the dial down here. I think I've made my position pretty clear, and frankly, I'm a little tired of just debating about it 800 times on Twitter, which is probably my fault for engaging in that rabbit hole in the first place. Bottom line is this outcome was wholly predictable. And I understand and get a lot of 7th-round picks. Most 7th-round picks won't make it. But if a guy doesn't even have a chance to compete, and you know that when you draft him, he's your number 4, there is no path barring, a major injury to a quarterback ahead of him, which was unlikely to occur, then I just don't know what the plan was. And yes, it's a 7th-round pick, and it's not going to make or break the franchise, but it's the principle of the matter. And all draft picks matter. All draft capital to me is important and valuable. And as you pointed out on Twitter today, that Pittsburgh's had success with 7th-round picks, ranging from Brett Kiesel to Kelvin Beachum to Tyler Matakevich to Nick Williams, although that did not occur at Pittsburgh. But even if that 7th-round pick wouldn't have worked out at all, just giving the guy the chance to compete, have the opportunity in play, Oladokun getting 19 total reps in training camp, just bad process to me overall. And so, yes, this team needed a 4th quarterback, but no, they did not need to draft a quarterback to accomplish that. They drafted Oladokun because they were not going to be able to sign him as an undrafted free agent. Their payout structure is among the cheapest in football, and he would have gone somewhere else. And so that is the reason why they took him. It was their cheapness that cost them the draft pick, essentially. So is this going to rob the franchise? No, but not at all. And maybe this guy circles back to the practice squad. We'll have to see there. But it's just the principle of the matter. And my bar for 7th-round picks is incredibly low. I just want guys who compete and actually see the field and have a chance. And Oladokun was not afforded that opportunity.
All right. So to be clear, this is not a fire everybody and move the team to Albuquerque, right? Which would be kind of closer to me. But I understand where you come from, and I share some of the same sentiments with you as well, too. We both agree this guy was going to get cut at some point, right?
Sure. And yeah, probably some other 7th-round pick likely would have been cut. But heck, this team just drafted Trey Norwood last year, 7th-round pick. Mark Robinson, 7th-round pick this year. He's likely to make the team. So, I don't want to say that those odds for another position, any other player would have had better odds to make it.
Right, and this was after the team had signed Mitch Trubisky. Obviously, Mason Rudolph was under contract. Kenny Pickett was drafted a few rounds earlier. And knowing how the process goes at training camp, or would go with no longer having to accommodate Ben Roethlisberger, it was very predictable, right? How this would go.
Wholly predictable. They knew he was not going to get reps during training camp, and again, they drafted him just to be that 4th quarterback, and because another team would have offered a partial base salary guarantee had he become an undrafted free agent. So they drafted him basically because they knew they weren't going to be able to win that undrafted free agent battle. And it wasn't about Mason Rudolph getting traded or anything like that. It was, to me, just solely for those 2 reasons.
And that annual pool that they use, that's the limit that you can give signing bonuses to all of your undrafted free agents. They only use like 99,000 or something like that of that money. And the limit was like, I don't know, what was it? What did I post?
62
or 162 or 167,000. So, they could have very easily, and they ended up giving an 88,000 something dollars signing bonus as part of it. So they could have probably gotten off a little bit cheaper and still ensured that they got the player. Now, obviously, you run the risk of him not making it the rest of the draft. Would he have been drafted in the remaining picks there? So I suppose that can be the pushback on that. But they had to know that the likelihood of him getting much of any work during the preseason or training camp was going to be low at the get-go. And, this is just another argument of maybe why they need to better their or take a hard look at their undrafted free agent process if they want to continue to work through the draft and work through rookie undrafted and give himself a better shot. Because look, there's not many left of that of the undrafteds now, right? 2? Is there 2 left?
Jeter and Warren, I believe, are the only 2. And at least Warren looks like he might be something. So that's encouraging. But yeah, even if Oladokun had hit undrafted free agency, Pittsburgh was not going to pony up $80K. The precedent that would set, and some of the team might have offered $150 in a partial base salary guarantee. That's pretty popular. Oladokun had plenty of pre-draft interest. So again, the bottom line is, in a sentence of why I didn't like the pick then, don't like the pick now, and kind of died on this hill, is I just want my draft picks to have the opportunity to play and compete. That's it. Knowing that most of those guys aren't going to make it, you're going to miss a lot. that's fine. You can live with that. But just have the opportunity to compete, to evaluate. You never know what could happen. Oladokun not giving that. And again, I'm not mad at the team for not giving him those chances. They shouldn't have, because they needed as many reps as possible for Mitch Trubisky, for Kenny Pickett. Mason Rudolph was going to get those reps. So I understand, and I would have done the same thing this camp, not played Oladokun. You got to get as much work as you can for the other guys. But that's why you don't draft him in the first place.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here now. And
you're like my Twitter timeline. All right, go ahead. You're going to be like Eggman 430, 69, whatever, XX. All right, go. You're in character.
Scene. Action. Let's suppose I'm going to throw a hypothetical out for you that Mason Rudolph gets dealt here before week 1. Oladokun lands on the practice squad. They carry 2 quarterbacks on the 53 to start. Does it become more forgivable at that point?
Or I mean, a little, but
it's still the process.
It's primarily the process for me, because even 7th round quarterbacks in general, I mean, the hit rate for 7th round picks, as a whole are low. For quarterbacks, they are minuscule. It's like Trevor Siemian is one of the best examples of a 7th round quarterback that quote unquote worked. So you just a lot of odds working against you with that pick there. Now, maybe they released him now from the 85 to 80 so he could have a better chance to pass through waivers, because if you're doing it at a final cutdowns when other teams are getting rid of their quarterbacks and it's a game to be played, will a team claim an Oladokun with a game to go and have to maybe release a quarterback that was going to play in that finale? Oladokun's not ready to play for another team come this weekend. Maybe they're trying to kind of circumnavigate things that way. So it is possible he ends up back on the practice squad. I'm not going to exclude that possibility, but just more to the point of this outcome was 100% predictable and not just bad process.
Okay. All right. Anything else to add to that?
No, I'm going to shut up. I think people don't like hearing about it, but I've just been consistent all along about what happened, why it was bad at the time.
You have. Yeah. And look, the moment he was drafted was the moment that I said, in my gut, it became, well, maybe they're going to trade Rudolph here. That's the way I viewed that pick the moment it happened.
Yeah, I didn't see it in that light, and I'll take my arrogant victory lap because I'm the guy that said they were going to draft 2 quarterbacks, and I said Oladokun was going to be that second quarterback.
Yeah, you did.
And I think I've called this whole process through and through. So I'm going to die on this hill, and I'll shut up about it after this because I know people don't want to hear about it too much. Because again, this is not make or breaking the franchise, and heck, Omar Khan did not even draft Oladokun himself. He was not GM. Andy Weidel was not in Pittsburgh when Oladokun became a Steeler, so that was a Colbert pick, and we're all moving on.
Let me ask you, did you in that mock draft where you had them choosing 2 quarterbacks, did you list in there how it was going to play out?
I don't know if I wrote that he was not going to, that it would be a bad pick and that he wouldn't make the team and wouldn't get reps. And my first question after he was drafted was, is this guy going to even get to play, during camp? And I was pretty, Mike Tomlin made the comment of, we've had 4 quarterbacks before when they get reps. And no, this is a different situation without Ben. So I was pretty confident in this process playing out the way that it's played out.
All right. The next one, I suppose you're ready to move on from this now.
Sure, let's talk about Genard Avery. And that to me, I mean, talk about the consequences of it. Certainly, the loss of Avery here is more surprising. You knew Oladokun was going to get cut at some point, just a matter of when. Avery, you thought was going to be your number 3 outside linebacker. And so now there's a whole lot of what happened and what's the plan from here. And you've got some theories about what this could mean and a potential return for Genard Avery. So whatever direction you want to take it in, feel free to lead.
Yeah, like everybody else, I was surprised. In fact, my brain read Ulysses Gilbert III. Right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, right. When it came out on the release, my brain read Genard Avery as Ulysses Gilbert III, and I immediately said to myself that's wrong. He's already gone. He's already been waived off of IR. That's what it did to my brain. It didn't even register because it was foreign to me, but like everybody else, I was surprised that his name was on the list. Now, I've learned over the years, try to back up and try to look at all angles of this. And I'm not saying that this is the way it's going to go with him. Now, look, if he re-aggravated that groin, okay, and he was facing potential IR. I mean, you cannot cut an injured player unless there's probably something worked out. You know what I'm saying?
And there was no designation with him. No.
Right. There was zero. Right. And you usually you don't see that, I guess you had the thing. What was it with Dena? But Pitta was on the list, I think, wasn't he? On the.
What are you referencing exactly?
A player that actually has a termination, a flat-out contract, a vested player that has a contract termination that is then given a settlement. That's a rarity anyway. Mm-hmm. And I forget. I have to look and see how. Wasn't Pitta the one that was just recently this offseason?
Dennis Pitta?
No, who was the one with the hip?
I know who you're talking about. I can't think of the name right now. It's not Jawan James. Jawan James?
No, the Ravens tight end.
Nick Boyle?
No, was it Boyle?
I don't remember.
Oh man, that's gonna kill me.
The Ravens have too many tight ends. First of all, they have like 43.
And they got another one now. We got to worry about.
Likely, I know Isaiah Likely looks like a
guy. On top of it, there. Maybe it was Derek Wolfe that I'm thinking of, the defensive lineman.
Dennis Pitta had a hip, but that was years ago. I mean, you're right on that.
All right, maybe it was Wolfe, and I'm confusing the positions there because of I think Pitta had a hip as well too. This is going to bug me.
Yes,
now,
it was Derek Wolfe. He was waived after reaching an injury settlement in June.
All right, but was he waived from IR?
I believe. I don't know for sure. I'm just looking at this on the fly, but I'm guessing that's who you're thinking of.
All right,
he had a hip issue, so there you go.
I mean, let's see. Let me look in 2022, 6/4. That happened on 6/14, I think. Okay, he was. I found the official release from the NFL. He was It's a termination of a vested veteran. All right, so he was vested, and it says with injury settlement there under him. All right, so he wasn't on any kind of list or anything like that. Genard Avery. In other words, if Avery was hurt, I think you would have seen something like this. All right. Right. With an injury settlement. So that leads me to believe that, okay, maybe his groin's not feeling 100%, but it wasn't serious enough to send him to IR. And also, if you send him to IR now, he doesn't qualify to be designated for return, right?
Right. He has to be a part of the initial 53-man roster. So let's assume, short answer, Genard Avery is healthy or healthy enough by the team's doctors.
All right. Well, then there's only really maybe two scenarios left here. The first is he's just not fitting in. They don't like what they see. They don't view him as part of their plans in 2022. And they did him a courtesy of not waiting the extra week and cutting him now to let him catch on with another team. That's one scenario here. And I think you put in there, did he miss a meeting or something like that? I mean, I suppose that's an angle that you could take. Maybe you pulled something that happened last year with Melvin Ingram that says, I don't like my role,
Right. I had that thought cross my mind. Yeah, the meeting thing, I'm just spitballing ideas. No idea if that's true. I'm just trying to think of what could lead to a surprise cut.
All right. I did not include the I don't like my role or late for the meeting in any of my scenarios there. Okay. But okay. I think the probability of that's probably a little bit lower, but sure. Anyway, the only other thing I can think of, and it would be kind of a week early there, is maybe maybe they weren't going to play Avery anyway in this upcoming preseason game. All right. And we still don't really 100% know what's going to happen here with Montravius Adams or Miles Killebrew. Both of those guys seem to be the most injured on the team besides Marcus Allen, who we think is working himself, or probably the closest of them to returning. You agree?
Right. There is Derek Watt as well, but sure. I assume he's getting closer to health. He seemed pretty close at the end of training camp.
All right. Now, the whole thing is, and this even happened last year. I mean, it happens a bunch in recent history with the Steelers, but it normally happens either the final cut down day is they terminate, these guys. They the guys that need to go IR, they make the original 53. Then a couple of days later, they go to IR, and then they bring back, re-sign the guys that they had terminated the contracts on. We saw this just last year with a lot of people forget Arthur Millette. And Arthur Millette, I believe, had the minimum signing bonus for the vet benefit contract in his deal. Rashad Coward and BJ Finney were the other two. So, and, you can go back over the years, and there's various instances, more than a few of them doing that kind of 53 roundabout, if you will, because of needing to have players be on their 53-man roster that they wanted to get to IR because they wanted to have them eligible to be designated to return players. So is there a possibility that maybe, they went to Avery and said, look, if you get signed, you get signed. We're going to have to take that chance. You get a better offer out there. But our plan is to bring you back after the 53-man roster is set.
It's possible. I understand what you're saying. You laid it out very well and very clearly and talked about the precedent, but I just go back to, if that was the plan, why now? Why not from the 80 to 53 cut down the way that you saw it with Millette and Coward and Finney last year? I don't see the purpose of doing that today.
The only thing I can figure is, my best answer to that would be is, A, you weren't going to play him in this game. You're going to you're going to probably sit several of your guys in this game. You probably want to get a look at some of these younger outside linebackers anyway. And you need enough bodies to get done what you want to get done to get through a preseason finale. I
can't get on board with that, because if the starters were sitting, your backups are still going to play, and Avery's still a backup. And maybe we'll talk about this a bit later, Dan Campbell seems to be intimating that the starters for Pittsburgh will be playing at least the first half in this game. They're going to play more than maybe what they did last year. And so Avery would be not necessarily quite as much needed. And so I think Avery would have played in this game. So I just can't buy that either.
Sure. I'm just giving you a scenario there. And, that's where we stand on this right now. And the fly in the ointment here is obviously the timing of it, as you said, why wouldn't you just carry him on an 80-man roster and then make the decision with him a week later?
Right. Plus, I mean, if you intend on Avery being part of your week one roster, he's going to miss a game, going to miss a bunch of practice. The conditioning is going to be a bit more of an issue.
Sure.
Do that after cut downs, and you can turn that guy around in 24 hours essentially.
Sure. And that's the biggest giant pushback in the idea that he might be involved in a roster roundabout, if you will.
Right. So I we'll see, and maybe you're right. And if you're right, then it'll be a great call.
I'm not saying I'm right.
I'm
saying it's a scenario that might need to be considered here because of they have done roster roundabouts before, but not necessarily 2 weeks out.
Right. What I was going to say is maybe you're right, but my assumption right now, my Occam's razor, the simplest explanation is usually the most correct, that Avery was a football decision and just for whatever reason, not going to be part of his team's plans, whether that's his run defense not quite good enough, or he lost too much contain against Jacksonville, or whatever reason is. They really like Rashid or Tuska, et cetera, et cetera. To me, I'm going to proceed for now with the assumption it is a football-based decision. He will not be part of this team week one at Cincinnati.
Now, if you remember, my pushback on him was his pass rush.
He looked good against Jackson. We got 3 pressures. I mean, but
he also rushed inside and gave up contain.
Right. You're right. He did.
And he's not a power guy. He's a guy that's got to win with, in my opinion, got to win with speed or moves to the inside. So that was one of my giant pushbacks with him. Once again, I love the kid coming out of Memphis. I thought he should be, in my opinion, I thought he was going to be, an off the ball linebacker. Okay. Because I did not view him, even though he moved around a lot in Memphis. I really visioned him specifically being an inside linebacker in a 3-4, to be quite honest with you. And when going through his Eagles tape after he was signed this offseason, my biggest thought was, man, this guy, is this the guy that you want out there rushing the pass rusher? I mean, rushing the passer when Highsmith and Watt aren't in there. His
Right.
run defense I thought was, up to par. My biggest concern was his pass rush though overall.
Mhm.
Now, right before we got on, I was leaning pretty heavily into thinking, all right, well, maybe this thing might go with the roster roundabout here. But since then, Genard Avery has tweeted out one of those motivational messages on Twitter, and this one, and I didn't know this. Today is the anniversary of Kobe Bryant's birthday, right?
Yes, it is.
And it has a picture of Kobe Bryant in there, and it has a quotation in there. No matter how difficult the challenge is, always stay positive and believe in yourself. All right. So, and I don't think he's a guy that is on the Twitter machine too often, if you know what I mean. Let me see what his previous tweet was before that. Let me see.
I hope it wasn't happy to be a Steeler. Hopefully that wasn't this tweet. And yeah, we're again recording this here on Tuesday night. So people might be listening Wednesday. Kobe's birthday was Tuesday.
In fact, I think he has deleted that tweet, Alex.
Oh, now what does that mean?
Oh, breaking.
We're back to the Brian Windhorst meme. Why would he do that or whatever the thing is?
All right. So I don't know what that means now. Now I'm back to square one.
You don't know where to go.
I'm confused here. So I don't know what any of this means anymore. What does it mean? But man, look, I mean, this very well could be performance, sure, as far as that goes. But let me tell you this: Derek Tuska, Hamilcar Rashid, Delonte Scott, whoever right now, that ain't it. As number 3.
So do you think they add? There's a new guy coming?
They better.
Or is it that they like Tuska? They liked Tuska last year. He passed up Taco. He's ostensibly beat out Avery. His run defense is decent as a pass rusher. I don't think you're going to get much from him. So I hear you there.
That ain't it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
And I wasn't even convinced Genard Avery was it either.
Well, here's the other last interesting wrinkle. On Monday, because they didn't have practice Tuesday. On Monday, the report was that Hamilcar Rashid was getting first team reps. And so my thought was, where's Avery in that scenario? Highsmith is still out with a rib injury, but why is Rashid getting that work there? So that would indicate if this was a procedure type thing, why was Avery apparently losing some sort of reps, if not all reps, on Monday's practice?
You reckon Avery didn't want to play on special teams?
I mean, does he want a job? I mean, you got to, if you're going to be a backup, you got to probably play on special teams to some degree. I don't know.
Did he even log any snaps on special teams the other night? I forgot to look at that before we got on.
I know he was doing it in the opener. He was doing it in camp a little bit. He actually played a fair amount of special team snaps against Seattle. I imagine he was doing some against Jacksonville. I don't know off the top of my head his numbers.
Let me look and see if I can find them real quick. Oh, I'm looking at. I won't find them on that because that's 2021 right there. I definitely won't find them on that.
Right.
Let's look on the Jaguars game book here real quick. He played 30 snaps on defense and 6 on special teams.
Yeah. So again, I'll proceed with the assumption it's a football-related decision. That Tuska is now the number 3, that maybe Rashid is the number 4, and we'll see if they look to add help. But certainly the edge depth, you felt like Avery was going to be your number 3, and you felt, comfortable enough with that. And now you're wondering really who is next man up for Pittsburgh.
Exactly. And my thought was, even before any of this, was they need to add from the outside with the edge, and maybe they will. Who knows? I know what Flowers' name is being tossed around out there, Poplar name. I don't think I'd be too terribly angry with that, but they're going to have to me, they got to do something here.
And really, I should rephrase that and say, we know who next man up appears to be, Derek Tuska. The question is, how quality is that? And is that a good enough number 3 type of outside linebacker to get 25 snaps a game rotating with TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith?
I mean, do you really need to get Watt some reps against the Detroit Lions Sunday night?
I would not. No, he's going to sit for sure.
And Highsmith,
If he's healthy, he probably should get a couple snaps because he's missed quite a bit of time.
Right. So what is that? It seems almost based on the Monday report that Rashid's going to be one of the starters out there.
Yeah, it's always hard to tell, who was rotating because Delonte Scott's had a good camp. I think the upside is pretty limited, and I don't really see him as a number 3, but his camp has been very solid, and Tomlin seems to be happy with the job Delonte Scott has done.
All right. So anyway, long story short, that was a surprise cut on Tuesday, and now it at least where I sit, not thrilled with the depth behind TJ Watt or Alex Highsmith right now, and I wasn't thrilled with it before. So that's I am really feeling the blues right now.
I'll make it feel better. You were right about Nick Skiba getting released. I thought they might have him kick in the finale, but it's going to be Boswell to kick in this game. Christian Blake was signed after the Javon McKinley injury and some of the injuries at that position. He looked okay, but really had no path to make it. And Mateo Durant, the speedy undrafted rookie out of Duke. He showed that speed, that burst, but struggled with pass protection, had an ugly fumble in that Jacksonville game. And so his time in Pittsburgh seems to be done. And that's why I remember the whole stories that Mateo Durant, the highest signing bonus ever for a Steelers running back, was silly then, and it's silly now, and ultimately did not mean a whole lot.
Right.
So those are the cuts from 85 to 80. So with that in mind, anything else news of the day that you wanted to comment on about what happened today, Dave?
I'm trying to remember if we got anything left to cover as far as that. I think there was no. I mean, the team was off on Tuesday, right? And nobody spoke, so I think we're caught up as far as the housekeeping goes.
All right. Well, with the cuts in mind, let's talk about our latest roster predictions. Dave, yours went up on Tuesday. Mine is up on Wednesday, so it'll probably be posted by the time people are listening to this. Our dueling roster predictions, just one more after this. And so this is our next to last guess at what the 53-man roster will initially look like. We can go through it, compare our notes here. So I'll start with quarterback. Have the same 3 of Trubisky, Pickett, and Mason Rudolph. Again, it comes back to will or will not Mason Rudolph be traded? Will he, won't he? And that's really the only question in the quarterback room right now.
That's where I'm at too. These are obviously no changes in my 3, and I'm partial. I got one leg on the hill of not fully convinced that they won't trade Rudolph by week 1.
Fair enough. And I guess, Pickett's no worse than the number 2. If Pickett has another great game in the finale, could you argue about who this team starter will be? I'm pretty sure it'll be Mitch Trubisky. But as we talked about on Sunday night, it's really a question of when, not if, Kenny Pickett will play this year.
Right.
Running back, we're also in lockstep there. Najee Harris, Benny Snell, and Jaylen Warren. I switched out Warren for Anthony McFarland. Warren ran ahead of Ant the entire last week of camp. He ran ahead of him in the game. He took care of the football, and he offers more on special teams. So I thought McFarland didn't have a bad camp, but just really fell out of favor.
Yeah, and then this is a carryover of my same 3 from the last time: Harris, Benny Snell Jr., and Jaylen Warren. And I put a little note in there for the Benny Snell haters. Look, I know most don't like Snell, but I think head coach Mike Tomlin does, as he can be a core special teams player, and he comes with experience and a ton of effort. So same 3. I'm going to need a better reason to cut Benny Snell from where I am right now.
Me too. Fullback Derek Watt both making the team on our roster predictions as well. Same at tight end, pretty cut and dry there since the start of training camp. Pat Freiermuth, Zach Gentry, and Connor Hayward. Really don't see any chance of that changing, barring an injury in the finale.
I agree. And I am a little bit concerned about Derek Watt and that shoulder, but I'm going to assume that he'll be ready.
He seemed pretty close to it at the end of camp, and so hopefully he's going to be good to go for the finale, or at the very least week 1. Wide receivers, still the same here, keeping 6. We're all keeping the same, both of us keeping the same 6 receivers in Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, George Pickens, Calvin Austin, Miles Boykin, and Gunnar Olszewski. It's just a question of who's going to be inactive there, and it may come down to the status and health of Calvin Austin and how much time he continues to miss with that foot injury.
I would agree. And this is a carryover of all of my stuff right now has been a carryover from my roster prediction last week.
Our first difference comes along the offensive line. I'll just read all the offensive linemen that the two of us are keeping here. Dave, you're keeping 8 in Chukwuma Okorafor, Dan Moore Jr., James Daniels, Mason Cole, Kevin Dotson, Kendra Green, Joe Haig, and J.C. Hassenauer. I am keeping the same 8 and keeping a 9th in Trent Scott. I'll be honest, I didn't. You have not seen my roster yet, right? Because it's not.
No, I haven't.
All right, so you're flying. You're seeing this new with everyone else here. I did not expect Trent Scott to ever make my 53, but I wanted to be a little bit different. And, in watching this offensive line, and we'll talk about that more here in a little bit, Trent Scott knows the Pat Meyer system. He's, grown up in the Pat Meyer system, coached him in Los Angeles, coached by him in Carolina. And he's a guy that seems to be, more comfortable in using some of the techniques and philosophies that Meyer espouses. And so I could see Trent Scott making it as a guy that at least is doing the things that Pat Meyer wants when the other guys are new and struggling to pick some of that stuff up.
All right. Yeah. By having him, though, you're still would project him as a game day inactive?
I would think so. How safe is Joe Haig? Is he not as sturdy as I thought he might be? He's got the concussion right now, too. So I'm a little undecided there. But I just think that, again, Pat Meyer's going to say, give me Trent Scott. He knows the system. He knows what I want to do. And there's going to be some value in that might keep Scott around.
I don't care if it's 8 or 9 or whatever it is right now. This is a mess.
Yes, it is. And we'll talk about that more.
This is a hot mess.
Yeah, we'll talk about the offensive line more soon. But
I have 8, my same 8 from last time. You have, I assume you're saying 8 plus 1 then.
Right. Plus Trent Scott is the new one. I don't think either rosters had many changes from last one to this one.
I had 1.
Okay, and we'll get to that here in a second. But Trent Scott, one of my new additions to the roster. Defensively, defensive line, keeping 7 for the both of us. That is Cam Hayward, Chris Wormley, Isaiah Loudermilk, DeMarvin Leal, Larry Ogunjobi, Tyson Aluwalu, and Montrevious Adams. Just watching Adams in that ankle injury, seeing how serious that is. Could he potentially be an IR to return candidate? That is possible. He seems, relatively healthy to me. But even if he is IR to return, he has to initially make the 53. So they would still have to keep the 7 initially before Adams went to IR.
I agree. And Adams, and these are the same 7 that I had in my last projection. The big question mark. Actually, I guess 2 question marks. Kind of wondering what's going on with Loudermilk. I hope he gets a lot of burn in this game against the Lions and looks healthy and ready to go. And how much longer is it going to be on Montrevious Adams?
Right. Those are the 2 questions there. Everyone else is, the only thing I had was, and this gets a little maddening, but I understand the point. If you wanted to do the rare player for player deal, would you trade a Chris Wormley type to try to pick up an offensive lineman? I think that's out there, obviously, but it's a thought that, I've heard worse thoughts than that.
Okay.
All right, moving on here to the edge rushers, and I had the benefit of waiting until after the cut downs.
Cheated.
So I was playing the long game here with the roster. So my 4, TJ Watt, Alex Highsmith, Derek Tuska, and Hamilka Rashid Jr. And so I know you had Avery on yours. I would have had him on mine as well. Any idea on what replacement you would like to have there, Dave?
Yeah, I mean, how can it not be Hamilker Rashid at this point? So if you allow a mulligan there, it would be swapping out Avery for Rashid, knowing what we know now.
Would you put Rashid over Delonte Scott? I mean, you obviously would.
Oh yeah. No,
there?
No. It would be Hamilker Rashid.
For my one Giants buddy, it sounds like Quincy Roche's having a decent summer, but is fighting for a roster spot in New York. So I wonder if he could potentially come back to Pittsburgh if he is waived.
I don't think you can roll it out.
Yep. So I just saw that on my timeline today. Someone said he had a nice summer, but his spot's up in the air. So just keep an eye on the name Quincy Roche on that cut down from 80 to 53 next Tuesday. All right, inside linebacker, this is where your one change is at. The 5 that I'm keeping are Miles Jack, Devin Bush, Robert Spillane, Marcus Allen, and Mark Robinson. You are keeping the same 5. What was your difference from the last edition of your roster predictions?
The last time I had Buddy Johnson in there and Marcus Allen off.
Okay. Why the change?
Well, Marcus Allen, according to everything you've told me, it just seems like he's close to returning. Buddy just hasn't really maybe it's partially because he's playing a lot next to or playing some next to Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson has easily outshined Buddy Johnson. Buddy Johnson just looks. I mean, you have to look for him on film. In my opinion, and Marcus Allen being the special team guy that he is, most notably the up back, and has a little bit more athleticism and knowledge of the defense than Buddy Johnson. That's what precipitated that move. I'm assuming Marcus Allen will be 100% healthy here soon, and if anybody's going to bang the table for him, I think it'll be Danny Smith banging the table for him to stay.
I'm with you, and Trey Norwood has not done a particularly good job as the up back on this team. So I think Allen makes it there. And then Buddy, to me, is not. Buddy's a good tackler, and that's all I have to say good about Buddy Johnson. All right, Dave, let's talk about secondary.
Remember all that pushback I got back in one of these things? So, I think it was in the 90 in the 90 and 30 series. And I didn't really remember we'd had that conversation. I was very objective when talking about Buddy Johnson and what he did last year and how they still didn't know too much about him and how he was going to be in the battle for with several inside linebackers there. And somebody took it as a huge negative and a shot on him and almost inferring that Buddy Johnson was going to be a lock. Buddy Johnson's anything but a lock right now.
Wonder what that guy's doing from the comment section. Don't know. But yeah, I do remember that conversation there. Cornerback, I believe we're keeping the same five. Let me check. We are in Cam Sutton, Ahkello Witherspoon, Levi Wallace, James Pierre, and Arthur Millette. And at this point, I'm not really sure of the actual pure corners who is competing with those guys.
I have the same five. This is a carryover from my last one there too. Lane, kudos to him for the interception the other night, but I've almost thrown right to him. And, as you reported throughout training camp, seemed to be losing ground and everything along those lines there. There was no reason for me to make any changes this time.
Same here. At safety, you have five as well in Minkah Fitzpatrick, Terrell Edmonds, Trey Norwood, Miles Killebrew, and DeMonte Casey. We again have one difference here. I'm keeping just four safeties in Minkah Fitzpatrick, Terrell Edmonds, Trey Norwood, and DeMonte Casey. No Miles Killebrew, who has been hurt since day one of camp with a pec injury. Been a bit strange. He's kind of practiced, and he hasn't. He sat out. He was not in pads for the Jaguars game. So could he be an IR candidate? That's possible. Obviously, he did really well in special teams last year with DeMonte Casey, really the official number 3 safety on this team, playing in some of those 3 safety packages. I could see Killebrew getting bumped off the roster and did in order to put 9 offensive linemen on my 53.
Is there any way he's an IR candidate guy?
It's possible, but he came back in practice to some degree, so it's a bit weird. Would he go on IR after practicing, and what is the nature of that injury? I don't know what it is. If he had torn his pec,
it's a pec, right?
Well, we know it's a pec, but what's the degree? If he tore his pec, he wouldn't have come back in practice. He'd been in IR a while ago, or been not suiting up at all. So it's probably some sort of strain that might just be bugging him. So that's possible that he would become an IR type guy.
They just signed him to a new 2-year deal too, right?
Yeah, but how much money was it?
Totals out at $4 million, base salaries minimum and $2 million respectively. $965,000 signing bonus.
Yeah, that's not. You hate to have that in dead money, but it's not so much that you wouldn't make a move, or you just felt like it was warranted. It really goes back to just, is he healthy? And right now, he doesn't seem to be. He's obviously not 100%. So that's the question there.
Well, if he wasn't, if you didn't have plans for him for IR and you thought you're going to move on from him now, why wouldn't he get the Genard Avery treatment right now?
Sure. That's a good point. I really don't have a great read on the situation, but ultimately I think Casey has played well and has a role and has value and more defensive value than Miles Killebrew. And that's why I made the change.
Well, look, in no way, shape, or form do I really even consider Miles Killebrew a safety.
Right. He really is a, pure special teamer type of guy.
So the question is can they, do they have the roster spot to carry, an ace like him? And for all practical purposes, Derek Watt as well too. But you would think that maybe they'd use the fullback a little bit more this year.
Right. Could that be a Killebrew that initially makes it, then is placed on IR? Could this team release a Joe Haig or something, and then bring a Joe Haig back, or I don't know, something like that. I mean, that I assume is possible.
Okay.
Specialists are chalk across the board
Right.
from the three of us: Chris Boswell, Presley Harvard, and Christian Kuntz. So really no debate there. Anything notable on your practice squad, Dave?
Real quick, the changes you had were who? You had Scott going on. You had what else was different here?
Warren and McFarland. Warren on, McFarland off, Scott on, Killebrew off, and then obviously the edge position with Avery now obviously gone, and Rashid Jr. making it as that fourth outside linebacker.
Okay, all right. Before the Avery cut, I only had the one change, and that was Marcus Allen in place of Buddy Johnson. Now, obviously, it would be Rashid in place of Avery right now. If given that mulligan here. Okay, practice squad, anything notable here? I put Steven Sims on this time. I think I had about 5 new guys on here. William Dunkel is one of them. I believe, who else? Buddy Johnson, obviously new to this list because I had him on the 53-man roster last time. I put old Henry Mondo on the practice squad this time. Man, that guy just 100% effort, and to me, kind of maybe the best of the also rans that won't make the team on the defensive line there. And trying to think who else sticks out here. For lack of just finding another offensive lineman on there, the newly signed Adrian Ealy has a lot of practice squad experience. So maybe that's a guy they try to spend some time with and maybe develop there. So I have him as a new addition on there. Now to read them off, all Oladokun, Kevin Rader, Adrian Ealy, Anthony McFarland Jr., John LeGlue, Cody White, Steven Sims, William Dunkel, Hamilcar Rashid Jr., who obviously now I have on the 53, Buddy Johnson, Delonte Scott, Henry Mondo, Chris Steele, Donovan Steiner, Justin Lane, and Carlos Davis. So a lot of familiar faces on there too.
We should talk about him now. I forgot to mention this team did make a move prior to their cut downs with Adrian Ealy being signed and rookie undrafted free agent Jordan Tucker being released. And so Ealy, a second-year guy out of Oklahoma. He'd been with a bunch of teams already, Baltimore twice, the Rams twice, a couple other teams along the way. And so he's now in Pittsburgh as the Steelers continue to totally revamp their 13 offensive line. And so, Ealy will get to play in this finale. We'll see how he looks, but Pittsburgh obviously dissatisfied with their offensive line overall. These are not decisions and moves that'll change the starters, but those may come later. But Pittsburgh just trying to essentially throw as much at the wall as possible and hope something sticks.
And here's the thing with Ealy is the fact that he's been a practice squad guy only, and the limited preseason action that he's seen in these 2021 and 2022 has been very limited. I think it's under 50 snaps, and I think 42 specifically. I think I wrote 42 or 43 with like 38 of them coming at right tackle. So if he does play Sunday night against Lions, you're probably going to see him at right tackle, I would think.
I think so too. I think Tom Meade liked him a bit more at guard coming out of Oklahoma. Said he played a bit too tall overall, but I assume Ealy will be playing tackle given that Tucker was released to make room for Adrian Ealy.
Okay.
My practice squad, I have a couple notable names here. I have 3 offensive linemen in LeGlue, Dunkel, and Ealy. I did put Mondo in my practice squad as well. I thought Mondo played pretty well.
I thought he did,
Jacksonville there. So he's got good athleticism overall. Buddy Johnson on the practice squad, Plutel, Donovan Steiner. I kind of had a tough time trying to come up with 16 names. I feel like they're going to go outside the organization for a couple of guys here.
They usually do.
Right. No Tyler Vaughn's on your practice squad? I had Vaughn's on mine.
I changed my mind last minute there, and just thinking about a few things. I mean, you can make a good argument for Vaughn's being on there.
Yeah, I think you can as well, but you got to fit Sims and then Cody White. They still like him, so it is a little tougher to balance all that. But I think Vaughn's play has certainly warranted him a longer look on this practice squad. All right, Dave, I think that covers it pretty well. So again, our differences were what's different from our rosters now. It's just me keeping Trent Scott and you keeping Killebrew, I believe, was the only actual difference there.
Okay, all right.
So, I mean, it felt like there's less debate about some of these spots. Usually we're kind of agonizing over a couple of spots. It feels like, and maybe things will change with the finale, but it was kind of easy to make this roster this time.
I agree. I didn't have any big decisions there. In fact, I had kind of already had it mapped out in my head before I even pulled the draft up on it. And once I pulled up my other, I always work off my previous copy there. I said, man, I don't have much to change it.
Right.
The readers are going to get mad at me for mailing it in or whatnot or whatever.
Well, because you and Matthew had identical predictions,
and
right?
I didn't even see Matthews, and ended up being identical to Matthews. So.
And mine's only one difference. So it feels like there's less debate. Now, there's always surprises and injuries, and I doubt it's ever going to be as chalk as we think it's going to be from our outsider 30,000 foot view. But it feels like you're not agonizing over which receiver or which defensive lineman or the last inside linebacker. It feels pretty, black and white.
And here's the thing. If you're worried about any of us hitting these 100% when we turn into final ones, we're probably not. And if there ever was a year that you hope that somebody, one or two come in from the outside here, it's this year, brother.
Right. Especially along the offensive line, which is a good segue because nothing's been talked about more this week than the Pittsburgh Steelers struggling. That's being charitable. Offensive line. Kendrick Green spoke with the media on Monday, said that Mike Tomlin basically tried, maybe not,
tore him a new
the
one.
right word. What's that? Yeah, tore him a new one, basically in front of the whole team to go over his assignments and his film. And it sounded like he wasn't the only one, but certainly the attention's been given to Kendrick Green for his summer struggle. So the big question is, what's wrong with the offensive line? Can it be fixed? And what does this team have to do in terms of any outside moves to try to improve the front five?
Man, you would think at this point now, if there was anyone not on a current team that they liked and thought they could have at a reasonable price, they would have made that move by now, especially prepping for this final preseason game. Now, their idea might be we're still scouting some of this, and we want to see if any of these guys, maybe there's a guy we like more at a cheaper price or something, a young kid that would have to go through. But you're not, even so, if it's a young guy here, there's no guarantee he makes it to you in waivers. So it's not like you can say, well, if this player with under 4 years experience gets waived, we'll just go get him because he's subject to the waiver wire.
Right. And Pittsburgh's, because it's based off of last year. So they're 20th in the waiver order.
Right. So, I mean, if there's any, if there's a top two that people, and everybody's looking for offensive line work, I mean, help at this point, right?
Sure. I mean, you just saw two trades within the last 48 hours where Cody Ford's going to Arizona and Cole Van Lanen's going to Jacksonville. And so, teams are willing to deal. Nothing from Pittsburgh there. Who knows if they had interest or whatever the case is. But, basically 25 teams looking for offensive line help. The other 7 are usually holding on to their help or trading it away.
Right. So, I mean, here's the thing. Hopefully they've been watching what's been going on.
I'm sure they have. I mean, that's their job, the pro scout department. They're going to be looking at those things. So I think they're going to add somebody.
I do too. I don't have a clue who that somebody would be, though. I mean, we could sit here. People are throwing out this Isaiah Wynn from the Patriots and some of these other guys. But and we talked about. We've had so many podcasts and so many live streams. Didn't we just talk about Wynn on the live stream the live stream and how he's on the 5th-year option right now? And what are you going to give up for a 1-year rental? Are you willing to do that to pay? Look, if he fixes a problem and it costs $10 million to do it, then but what's it going to cost you as far as compensation to get that done?
Right. And I don't think he fixes the problem. I don't think one man, and you're not implying that, but
no.
To me, there is no. I think this team will look to add. They'll add somebody to be more of the reserve backup type, but there is no white knight coming in off a roster, off the street, saving the Steelers' offensive line. The way you fix it is the very boring answer I gave Monday with reps, more mistakes, more learning, getting better. The long, slow grind of growth and progression, and then adding some backup type guys that may become starters by midseason if the line is still struggling.
I mean, can you use Mason as commodity to maybe trade for somebody,
I mean, you can. I mentioned Wormley earlier. I mean, but how good is that guy going to be? He might be,
Right.
around the caliber of what they have right now. I mean, I think they will, waiver claim is probably the most likely route in which they'll add to the offensive line. They're going to look to explore it, but there is no guy that's getting cut off another roster that's going to come in and likely be this amazing find for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Here's the thing. Okorafor's not going anywhere. He's going to be a starter, right?
He's been their best offensive lineman. Him and Mason Cole have been the best two guys,
Right.
But short answer, yes.
Okay. If you make a move at that other tackle position, that signifies right there that we got that wrong.
With Dan Moore.
Right.
This is, I said earlier this year, this is make or break. Such a big year for Dan Moore. It tells you if he's the future or if he's not. And it's early, but the early returns have not been promised.
Kendrick Green's already, I mean, I wouldn't be totally stunned if he didn't make the 53 from where I sit right now. It's rare for the Steelers to give up on somebody that quick like that, but
could it be he makes it initially, but a waiver claim pushes him off? I could see that happening.
Okay. Yeah. However you want to get it done, that would shock. What do they need more, a tackle or a guard?
And they really need both. It's
Right.
It's been bad in a lot of areas. Left guard's been a mess. James Daniels, he's going to start, but he's been disappointing. The tackle spots, starters, depth, a lot of question marks there. Again, my overall thoughts on the offensive line is they're just uncomfortable with some of the teachings that Pat Meyer has implemented. And I believe they were basically saying as much on Monday. Mason Cole saying guys weren't trusting technique. And the word I use with this offensive line is uncomfortable, the way Pat Meyer teaches things. And I did a pretty lengthy breakdown on the site on, would that be Tuesday, explaining some of the issues and pass sets that Pat Meyer has, which is probably different than what the team was doing last year, what James Daniels is doing in Chicago. And so the silver lining to that is things should get better, players should get more comfortable, and the play should reflect that. But I don't know how much better it's going to get and how quickly that happens and all those big, important $1 million questions.
All right. Now, I thought it was a phenomenal video. It's a good 20 minutes. I think you put in there, kind of everything that I've seen so far. Show, don't tell me about the labor pain. Show me the baby. All right. And I'm asking you, honestly, what is your thought? How much better do you think this offensive line, regardless of if it's Dotson, let's assume that it's Dotson at left guard of these five, how much better, how much more, how much better can those five be?
You can get better. And I don't want to close any doors yet because I understand the growing pains. And I really tried to work hard to understand what Pat Meyer's teaching, but I don't think it's going to be good enough. I think it's going to be a big problem. And I said this Monday, I've said this a couple of times. You can hide a lot of things on your team. You can hide less than stellar quarterback play, or receivers who aren't great, or running backs that isn't the best, or whatever the case is. You can't hide a bad offensive line. There's very limited things you can do, run past, to mask some of those issues. And so it's going to be a problem all year. I mean, this is a healthy group too, let alone when injuries strike. Right. What's going to happen then?
That's my sentiments as well. However much better they get, I don't think it's going to be enough in there. And within that, how many people listening to this right now believe that all five, and let's assume Dotson is the left guard, how many of these, are all five going to play every snap of the season? And the answer to that most likely is no.
To be fair, most people would say good. I don't want those guys playing every single snap because it has not been good enough. Let's try to get someone new.
I've gotten to the point now where I don't mind seeing Joe Haig on the field. Okay. And that's where I'm at right now. And the fact that I'm there, that should tell you a lot as well too.
And I'm at the point where I watched Trent Scott and went, well, that's a pretty good rep from Trent Scott. So I believe the kids call it. I believe the kids call it down bad.
I gotta clean my computer screen now.
Sorry about that. Yeah, we're both down bad is what the kids call that when we're like, hey, Joe Haig, Trent Scott, they're not too bad. So again, the video breakdown explains it better than I can, in just the audio form right now for the issues that this team's having with Pat Meyer. Again, his philosophy are a lot of really aggressive pass sets. He literally said in the clinic that I watched, typically when a guy loses a battle, it's because he wasn't aggressive enough. He will tell players as they come back to the sideline, be more aggressive. And that's not just the whole general go hit somebody kind of thing. That's where you're going forward in your pass sets. You're making the first significant contact is a phrase that Pat Meyer really lives by overall. So you're not seeing guys, because most guys want to take a bit more of a passive set. They want to be a little bit more, I don't want to be so forward that I get beat and things like that. And so short answer is some of the things I'm seeing with each guy that struggled as much as they have. With Dan Moore, his sets are not aggressive enough. His punch is missing. He's not using independent hands enough. He's doing more two-hand punches. With Kendrick Green, his feet stop on his punch. He's struggling with off-body sets, so basically against a three-tech who's outside shade of him. Kevin Dotson has not followed some of Pat Meyer's rules in terms of giving the tackle more help when the center is sliding to him. James Daniels' hands are too wide. His first significant contact punches are poor, and his sets are not being aggressive enough. And so that's just a kind of a very skinny version on the issues here, but basically not making good contact on your first punch, and the sets have not been aggressive enough are the overall issues along this offensive line. Plus, you're not picking up stunts and twists in games well enough.
So what the hell they've been doing since May?
It's a fair question. It's different when you're doing it on air or in practice versus in a game, obviously. And so that's the growing pains, I guess, that they're going through right now when everything's live.
Because one of the things we were kind of hopeful for is, oh boy, at least these guys are getting, some continuity, something that they didn't have last year, due to, camp injuries here and there and people missing and, Banner and all like that. It's a mess right now. Does this make you want to have more two tight end personnel groupings this year or less? Or, I mean, they're going to have to use 11 a lot because they're going to be in second and long and third and long a lot,
Right. Tight ends, it doesn't matter. The tight ends aren't blocking the D tackle. They're not blocking the right D end. So, I mean, you can bring in all the tight ends you want. It really isn't going to change things too much. The workarounds are having hopefully a run game that stays on schedule relatively well. A lot of boots and rollouts. You're going to see 70,000 boots and rollouts and things like that to try to move the launch point. How about the offensive line a little bit? But really just have to rep it and hope these guys just get more comfortable, because I think what they're doing is a little bit different than what they've been taught.
Maybe that Kenny Pickett quick snap to throw time will end up paying off anyway.
Yeah, bring Ben back. He gets the ball out quick, right? 2.1. That's about all this offensive line can do right now.
It's a mess, brother. I'm here to tell you. I'm fearful of how this is going to look.
Yeah, I am too. I don't think anyone's confident right now. Here's the other thing too, and it's an obvious point, but it's worth saying out loud again. 3 offensive line coaches in 3 years, 2 in the last 2. I know most of these guys haven't been here 3 years, but everyone's been here too, besides Daniels and Cole. And so whenever there's if you had 3 offensive coordinators in 3 years, you'd be called the Cleveland Browns. And you talk about how a quarterback is struggling because there's so much change, a new guy in his ear every single year. Same thing with an offensive line. It's just less talked about. It's less obvious. But when you have so much turnover with your offensive line coach, a guy who comes in a different philosophy, assistants that have different philosophies as well, just different people talking to you, it's hard to build that consistency and continuity. So no wonder these guys are struggling. What they were just taught a year ago, they're scrapping and they're doing something totally different. And offensive linemen are pretty good creatures to have, but they like to be set in their ways and just have the technique down and stuff like that. And so I think that's an underrated issue. And again, Adrian Clem left, and it's what can he do about that? But it's, I think, a big elephant in the room. Different coaches every single year. Predictably, you're going to struggle.
Well, my hope at this point is they find something here after the cut downs. They've got to do something, because what they have right now of these 8 or 9 that we're projecting them keeping, that's not going to work.
No, it's not. But we'll keep watching it. Again, go and watch that video, because I get it's very easy to say that these guys are just bad or they're not doing, some broader thing incorrect. And some of that may be true, but you really have to look at the specific technique. And I know I've kind of been on a high horse about that, but it's not often that we get actual clinic information from Steelers coaches. I was really happy to have that hour-long presentation that Pat Meyer did a couple of years ago, because usually we don't get that kind of window into how a guy teaches things. And when we have that information, we need to really remember that and use it, because that's literally what's being taught right now. And to properly and best evaluate these guys is to understand what they're being asked to do. and then you can follow along if they're doing it or not, or where they're having problems. And I think I've been able to map that out pretty well. So whenever I hear things like Mason Cole talk about not trusting technique, I've been able to kind of really specify what those issues are and what they look like.
All right. What about the pushback from the fans that say, well, if they had Mike Munchak, this would be better?
I mean, they're probably not wrong. Mike Munchak's a great offensive line coach. Again, how much better would it be? I don't know.
It feels like the clay that you're given to work with here is not as good quality of clay.
Sure. Again, it's not one singular issue. If you had 5 Alan Fanekas on the field, things would probably look a whole lot better right now. Munchak's apparently in Minnesota right now.
So yeah, leaning next to a trip up there. Yeah. Why don't you pay? It's not too late.
Right. I mean, he says his daughter lives in Denver. Go buy his daughter a house in Pittsburgh down there on the south side. That's what I would do. Now again with Pat Meyer.
But how
again,
much better would it be really if we're
fair.
realistically speaking at this point?
That's a fair point. I understand that completely. And again, there are going to be changes there. You're not going to see some of these guys as, Kendrick Green, you could give Mike Munchak, probably not going to fix him that much. Now, to Meyer's system, the issues I've had with that are because it is so aggressive, you can win. And when you win pretty quickly and pretty dominantly. But when you lose pretty poorly. And you've seen James Daniels lose poorly and Kendrick Green lose poorly, specifically because of some of those ultra aggressive forward pass sets that Pat Meyer wants. I think these sets are much better against bull rushes and power rushes when guys counter with spin moves and more finesse type moves and outside rushes. You're seeing these guys get into trouble. And that's kind of the trade-off that Pat Meyer has whenever you're trying to be so aggressive. There's a really good reward to that if you can win early, but there's a risk to that of if I lose and I don't have help, I'm getting beat because I'm aggressive. I'm going forward on the snap. And there is not a lot of margin for error in that system.
All right. So we'll keep our fingers crossed. Where else are they likely to add? Outside linebacker, I think, and offensive line are the 2 areas I think they're most likely to add from the outside by week 1.
Yeah, I think that those are the 2 key spots, barring injuries that crop up anywhere else. I'm not really sure another position this team could look to add to, again, barring an injury there. So I think edge and offensive line, just the trenches, no big deal. Just the nuts and bolts of football is where this team needs some help.
And you better hope the defense stays healthy, and you better root for Mark Robinson to get on to fast track this thing in a hurry.
Yeah, speaking of him, now that you've gone through the all-22 again and again, your thoughts on Mark Robinson, Dave?
Fantastic. Jumps off the tape. Couple of missed tackles. I think that's kind of what would be the biggest ding on him. I think he gets it, and I think he'll get better here. Remember, this is a converted running back. Played 1 year linebacker at Ole Miss here. He's not afraid to go forward. He's not afraid to mix it up. He's not afraid to take on guards. And even look, it's easy to do with some of those hits on the college tape and all, and really a couple of days already had in the preseason here to say, oh, it reminds you of a young Vince Williams there. Well, even Vince Williams jumped on the Twitter machine on what is today? What is today?
Tuesday. People probably listen to this Wednesday, but it's Tuesday.
Okay, Tuesday night, he jumped on Twitter and said, he was better than I was when I was a rookie, and I think he moves a lot better than Vince did. I think Vince was probably a tad bit more physical, but I tell you what, I want to see a lot of him in this finale. I think I think if you start him and burn him as much as you can burn him, maybe it'll be maybe you see another incremental step out of him in the process. I would really try to fast track this guy as much as I can, because I've got a feeling, Alex, that he's going to have to play some meaningful snaps sooner rather than later for the Steelers in 2022.
Yeah, I think he has the things you look for in a Steelers linebacker. He's physical, he's instinctive, he's downhill, he doesn't second guess. He's got but he doesn't play out of control either. He's not a guy that's running around like crazy and out of gaps. I mean, this guy, he's playing gap schemes well, and he's filling, he's fitting the run well overall, and he's not some kind of crazy total feast famine type of dude. And so there's work to do in coverage and his long speed, and there's probably a lot he just doesn't know yet in terms of route concepts and feeling routes behind him, what offenses like to do, and how to watch film as a guy that's played linebacker for a year. There's a lot of probably little things he's got to work on, but just some of the things that you just can't teach, he has it, and that's really encouraging.
Right. He's we've seen him do a good job against guards and getting off of them and making tackles close to the line, not 4 yards off the line of scrimmage either. He's been right up in there, 2 yards within the line of scrimmage, fighting some guards and getting off and sliding over and getting in on the tackle there. So, I mean, look, Devin Bush supposedly Monday sat out with an ankle. Interesting to see how that progresses the rest of the week here. But from what we've seen from Devin Bush, and if that last game was Devin Bush's best effort, then I'd have no issue starting Mark Robinson over him, to be honest with you, from where I sit right now. And look, I mean, Robert Spillane, bless his heart, he is what he is. I think you can definitely, in short yardage situations, goal line situations. There are situations where you can put Robert Spillane on the field, especially when you think it's a run, run probabilities high and all that. But he is who he is out in space,
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think you're too far away from, I don't think the gap between Robinson and Spillane and Bush is that great right now from what I've seen in these first 2 games, to be honest with you.
I think that's fair. I do think, though, if Bush is out of the lineup for whatever reason, Spillane's still going to get first crack because he is the more veteran guy. He probably has a better just understanding of the defense and opposing offenses and what they like to do, and he is still physical and downhill and has some of those traits that Mark Robinson possesses. So I still think Spillane is next man up there.
Will Mark Robinson be a starter by after the bye week?
No, I'll say no. It'll be Bush or Spillane.
I'll say yes, he will.
Okay.
I've been really impressed, really, with him.
Me too. I think starter is just maybe a little too far right now.
All right, your thoughts on after going back through on Devin Bush the other night?
I mean, it was fine. It wasn't, as bad as maybe some people make it out to be. There certainly is some desire for some Steeler fans to want to pile on and every single rep say how scared he is, and some of that I think isn't true. But was it great? No, it's been just average play overall this whole summer.
Okay, I did say that that I thought it was his best game in some time. And
but I mean, was it on a putting that aside, just how good was it overall for your typical linebacker?
Yeah, not great, Bob.
I mean, average at best.
Yeah,
probably.
Average at best.
Right, and so that's the bar has kind of been shifted on what our expectations are. That's just the whole. Obviously, not what the intent was when they traded up to get the guy at number 10.
I mean, he really could use some reps in this next game, but I'm not convinced he's going to get him with that ankle now.
Right. Yeah. No idea the status of that. So hopefully he can, but if not, then it's Spillane and Robinson and Buddy or hopefully Marcus Allen will be healthy. He certainly needs some reps to finish out the summer. Any other thoughts going back through the tape there, Dave? Offense or defense? Anything that caught your attention?
We talked about Mondo, had some nice reps in there. I mean, it was enough for me to reconsider him on the practice squad. I thought Ogunjobi played fine in his time. I thought Aluwalu, good to see back out there. DeMarvin Leal continues to show flashes in there as well, too. Wormley, I thought, played okay in that game. There were a couple of negatives. I think him getting turned and pushed out, but nothing overly concerned there. It's unfortunate we haven't seen any Montravius Adams, and then Loudermilk, just a five snaps, not really enough to evaluate there.
Yeah, I think those are basically my thoughts as well. Didn't see as much from Connor Hayward as I had hoped. He played a lot. I just didn't stick out in a lot of ways, positive or negative with him. Tyler Vaughn's is interesting yak kind of guy. I think, again, he does not have really any special athletic tools. He tested as a marginal at best athlete coming out of USC, but he's just kind of a gamer that runs good routes and kind of tough to bring down. So I think it's a guy that's really done well to, do a pretty good job start to finish of being consistent. He kind of faded in the middle a little bit, but he started strong and is ending strong and played well inside stadiums, which is really a good path to get on the practice squad and hang around.
Tyler Wise brought to our attention that blown blitz pickup there that most everybody wants to put on Benny Snell there. And it's so hard to judge because you could make arguments either way. Was it Dan Moore or was it Benny Snell? Did you reach out to Brandon Thorne and get his objective take on it?
I did ask him. I have not gotten a response back yet. My inkling is to put it on Dan Moore, but I usually try to find examples of it going quote unquote correct, and I couldn't see any in there. Typically, though, because it was a linebacker and a nickel blitz, and usually the back's going to take the nickel blitz, and the tackle's going to slide down and take the linebacker. And I know in camp they were doing a backs on backers drill, and they were adding nickel corners in their blitzing off the edge, which probably was maybe a little nod to the game planning of we're going to see some of this stuff, so let's be better at picking it up. And so obviously the backs were picking up those blocks, and so just trying to read the tea leaves, my guess is that Snell was in the right there.
My initial thing from watching it the first 3 times through was, man, that's automatically on Moore. But see, if we don't back this up now with if we come out and say that was 100% on Dan Moore, then we get you've got a Benny Snell agenda here.
Yeah, I don't worry about that stuff too much.
But my first inclination was, after watching it, through a couple times, was that was on Dan Moore.
Yeah, I think.
And it's too bad you can't see the last little tail too of the all 22 above version there, because Benny Snell looks like he almost turns around at the end to almost give Dan Moore like, what the heck's going on here? But it's not enough. Automatically it switches to the end zone, view after that. So you can't, a lot of times you can tell if something goes wrong on the 22, if there, was a mistake by the way players look and talk to each other after plays over there, but in that instance you can't. So I'm with you. My first thought was that's on Dan Moore, but we cannot be 100% sure here.
And I just have to say separately, kudos to you. You were finding all the Easter eggs this week. You found the Matrix glitch celebration between Okorafor and Kenny Pickett, then the Georgia Pickens mule kick of that Jaguars DB.
Yeah, look, I love tape, man. I can't get enough of it. It runs damn near every hour that I'm on the computer here.
Is that Tiffany's birthday gift for Wednesday?
Nah, she doesn't understand my fascination with it. But anyway, I always she knows when the tape drops. I tell you that.
Yeah,
a mini celebration in the house.
Oh yeah, really?
Yeah, running downstairs. The whole 22's up. Yeah.
Right. Now we're very thankful that we have that kind of stuff, because it's been tougher and tougher to get our hands on lately. But it work.
Right, as we talked the other day, man, I remember when breaking down offensive line play just off the TV tape, and oh boy, the mistakes, the things that you don't see that way. But anyway, what about I haven't gone through the special teams tape. Did anything stick out in that?
If I can pull up my notes without making too much noise here, there wasn't anything. It was a lot of fair catches and touchbacks, and not anything super notable overall. What do I have here? I mean, the starting gunners were Boykin and Pierre. Might be kind of a glimpse into what the week 1 gunners might look like overall. Jalen Warren getting some burn. Warren's a really fearless, feisty, competitive guy. I just love his attitude overall. He's kind of got this little man complex, which I can very much relate to. So I just like the mentality, the big chip on his shoulder this guy possesses.
Okay. All right. We're done with that game now.
All right, Dave, what else is there to talk about? I think we've covered most of the big stuff overall. Anything we're missing that needs to be addressed?
Why don't you look over the site real quick while I get the email machine pulled up here.
Okay. Let's see.
Missed anything here.
It's obviously a lot of Kenny Pickett discussion with people like Colin Cowherd and Adam Schefter believing that Pickett will or should start at some point this year.
Oh, Dan Campbell. Why don't you go over what Dan Campbell said?
Yeah, he mentioned, I believe, during his Monday press conference that he didn't say it outright, but heavily implied that he's spoken with Mike Tomlin and the Steelers are going to play their starters in the first half. He said on Monday during his press conference, quote, I know their guys are playing about a half. I talked to Tomlin, so this will be really good for us. This will be really good. Just went on to praise Mike Tomlin. So assuming that's true, the starters will, be playing a fair amount in this finale, which is typically reserved for the backups, with Pittsburgh playing in 3 preseason games for the first time. They played in 4 last year because of the Hall of Fame game. So their approach appears to be different this time around.
I wonder if by referring to, some starters, he's talking about the offensive line.
That's a safe bet.
Because we're pretty convinced we're going to see the starting offensive line out there quite a bit in this game, right?
Yes, but it's a question of will Deontay Johnson play? Will Trubisky start? I mean, it sounds like Trubisky will probably start this game.
And Trubisky probably wants to, too.
I mean, that's what he says. But I mean, has any quarterback ever been asked, do you want to play?
Right.
And they just said, no, I don't want to. Maybe Ben. Maybe Ben has said that, but that's kind of expected. But it's a question of will a TJ Watt play? Will a Minkah Fitzpatrick play? Will Cam Hayward play? I mean, those are important questions I don't quite know the answers to.
All right. I think a lot of what else we've written about here, especially on Tuesday, is all the speculatory major media stuff,
Yeah, not as much happening with Tuesday being the team's off day. They're back at practice. Calvin Austin said his foot is feeling better. He's awaiting word to get the all clear from Tomlin. So is that a surprise IR candidate? It doesn't feel like that, but he's missed a fair amount of time with a foot injury.
Yeah, I would think that at least he's going to be close enough to stay on the 53. He might be inactive, the first week or two or something, but I mean, anything's possible, but I would think that he's probably at least healthy enough to stick on the 53.
I think so too, but you may see him as a healthy scratch or healthy enough scratch week 1 with Miles Boykin getting the hat over him. All right, Dave, I think we're ready to get to reader emails and close out today's show.
All right, Mark Chapman writes in, Robinson has earned a spot on the starting lineup alongside Jack, he says, reminds me of Shazier, but not as fast. He shut down the run game and can cover. He says Bush needs to be traded or let go. He says, look, we just talked a lot about Mark Robinson there. I mean, I think he's still got, some development in his game and probably learning some scheme stuff and all like that. But the gap between him and Bush and Robert Spillane, is a lot, to me, a lot closer in my head than it was obviously before preseason started. I mean, Shazier, I don't think that's the good comparison. I would call him kind of, maybe a more athletic Vince Williams, to be honest with you.
Yeah, we can all like and appreciate Mark Robinson. Ryan Shazier was one of the rarest athletes at the position ever. Mark Robinson, no, it is not. So I would not make that comparison. Vince is a much better comparison.
Let's see here. Roland Saucier writes in, greetings, Alex and Dave. I just wanted to float a few thoughts from Saturday's game. First, he says, I was very encouraged by Mark Robinson's play. I know it was preseason, but he played with his hair on fire. He says, I saw more instinct, aggression, and want in one half of football than I've seen from Devin Bush since his injury. He says, I honestly think Bush just doesn't love the game. I wonder where we've heard that before, Alex. If Robinson plays well again in next game, I would toy with the idea of him getting some varsity snaps from day one. I'd rather deal with him making some rookie lumps or taking some rookie lumps instead of Bush's BS, he says. Also, our O-line play was putrid. How much do you put this on coaching? We have little to no pedigree in terms of talent. And needed someone who could coach these guys up. I wasn't happy with Pat Meyer hire when it happened and not thrilled with the work he's done up to now. He says, guys, give me an honest opinion and thoughts on these issues. I think we already have. Great job, and thanks for being the best Steelers website in the biz. Roland, thanks for the kind email, Roland. Look, we've talked a lot about Mark Robinson. I think hopefully all that we've talked about so far in this podcast, no need to regurgitate it. And I think that's the same with the offensive line outside of, how much do you put this on coaching, Alex?
Yeah, I would say just very broadly, the difficulties are generally around the players trying to adjust to the new offensive line coach and what he's teaching. And again, the word I use is uncomfortable. Now, is there a talent gap and a talent issue? Sure. But I think the extra ugliness is coming from them adjusting their techniques and pass sets and mentality to what Pat Meyer is telling them to do.
All right, from Sim Football Critic writes in, like others, I have concerns with the O-line, but I'm sure you have covered this on the show by the time you see this email. He says, I will just say so far that Chooks and Mason Cole seem to be the best two of that unit at this point. He says, Uncle Dave said moving a bad center to guard. Well, you know the rest, he says. I think the Steelers have a diamond in the rough with Mark Robinson. Yes, he's a bit raw. Yes, he's a later round draft pick, but he says it kind of reminds me of Trey Norwood last year. Let me tell you, Mark Robinson at this point is a lot further ahead than Trey Norwood was last year. But I get the comparison there. He says, with Brian Flores coaching him and him still learning the position, I think he has a real shot of making some noise in due time. He says the question is if the Steelers only keep 4 inside linebackers, how likely is it he makes the 53? First, I don't think they'll only keep 4, but if they do, he'd be hard not to keep in those 4.
Yeah, I think Robinson, I'd be very surprised if Mark Robinson was not on the roster week 1. I think Pittsburgh sees the potential, the positive play that he's had. I think they keep 5, but if you made me keep 4, then Robinson to me is number 4.
I would agree. I would agree with you. He says, like always, thanks for the great job you guys do keeping Steeler Nation informed. Alex, we wouldn't have known anything about this team ahead of preseason had it not been for your training camp coverage. Best in the business by far. I agree. Hear, hear. Thanks for the kind email there. And let's move on to let's see. Hasm writes in, good morning, Dave and Alex. I was listening this morning and Alex asked the question, why can't this guy start week 1? He says that's a very fair question. Given Pickett's performance, he says, my reason for believing we should let Mitch start is because if they go with Pickett week 1, you almost certainly can't bench him if he happens to struggle. You're setting yourself up for a sink or swim scenario. Not that I think Pickett will lead us to sink, but he's still a rookie. Moreover, this offensive line looks really bad. Better to have a veteran navigate through that while allowing Pickett to ease in and perhaps start mid-season. I think the Steelers will probably make the switch at the bye, he says. I assume they'll have a mediocre record at the bye. He says, thoughts. Look, it's I don't think you're going to get any pushback from me on that. And I think Alex was Alex's argument is if he's ready, he's ready.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that's my stance. Is he's ready? I think he should start week 1. I understand that Trubisky is still very likely to start week 1, and I'm not going to criticize the team too much for it. I understand that it was Trubisky's job to lose. He has not lost that job. Ergo, he's the starter. To the idea of what was the reader's concern about you can't bench him.
Right.
I get that, but you can't go with that mentality. You don't have that failure plan leading. You plan for success and expect success, and Pickett certainly look good enough to warrant and expect that kind of stuff. Plus, if you start him week 4, hypothetically, and he struggles by week 8, you're still in the conversation of you bench him. So unless you're starting him over the last 4 weeks, the whole you can't bench him thing, again, I'm not gonna have my decision be ruled by what if it goes wrong for our franchise quarterback that we believe so highly in, that has played so well, et cetera, et cetera. So I understand that, but I'm not going to let that fear dictate my decision.
I guess does it matter when and if the ugly surfaces? Does it matter if it's in him starting and it happening in the first 4 weeks, or does it matter if he's takes over as the starter in week 5 and maybe there's a couple bad weeks? Does it matter when and if the bad hits? My view is if you start this guy week 1, you got to let him work through it.
Right. Well, if he's starting week 7, he's got to work. He's have to work through it. They all have to work through it.
Right.
Remember what the most common phrase that Mike Tomlin used this summer on his episode and appearance on the Pivot? What did he say? There was a phrase, and we're playing a little game here, that resonated so much with a lot of people. Do you have a guess of what I'm thinking of right now?
I can't recall off the top of my head. There's so much good in that episode.
Right.
It's the best Mike Tomlin you'll ever get, for a while.
Mike Tomlin said, a lot of times other teams, a lot of decision making, we overcomplicate things. We think about it too much. And I think all these variables of what about the offensive line? And what about if you can't bench him and this and that? And what about, is he ready? If he's ready, he's ready. Don't overcomplicate it. Is Kenny Pickett ready to be a starting quarterback in the NFL? Yes. Are there going to be peaks and valleys? Is he going to be as good as he's been the first 2 weeks in the preseason? No, he's going to have one terrible game and you're going to sit there and reactionary in a moment and say, is this the right pick and is this the right decision? I mean, that's all part of this process. There are going to be highs and lows of a career. That's natural, but don't overcomplicate it. Is he ready? Has he earned the ability to start week one? Yes. And that's why I say start on week one.
My view on this right from the get-go has been that Mitch Trubisky has got to lose the job.
Right. No, I'm just saying what I would do. I mean, I think Pittsburgh is going to start Trubisky on that basis. I mean, I still expect that. But I think, again, because people have always asked me, especially when Pickett was drafted, well, when do you start him? Yeah, the bye week is the popular answer. My whole answer has always been and always will be whenever he's ready. And to me, he's ready.
I mean, we both agree Kenny Pickett's going to play during his rookie season, right?
Highly likely. I mean, if he doesn't, then that means the Steelers had a great year. And that's a good problem to have.
Right. So, I would put Mitch out there to start with and see how much mileage you can get out of that, and then pull the plug on it.
And that's probably the approach Pittsburgh will take.
Right. And as we've talked since the schedule was released, those first 6 games are going to be a real barometer in my opinion.
And just the last point about the offensive line, I get that, but if the O-line's bad, it'll probably still be bad in week 6, and it might be worse when injuries and attrition and all that come up. And I get the whole idea of you don't want to have a rookie quarterback behind a bad offensive line, but I don't see this being like a Tim Couch or Joey Harrington situation. Pittsburgh still has a good culture, a good core overall. I don't think a rookie quarterback's going to get ruined the way that those guys did. There were so many other factors that pressed those guys into action too early before they were ready. Really, they kind of ruined their careers before they ever got started. So to me, I get the offensive line problems, but again, that's overcomplicating the decision on Kenny Pickett to a man should he start.
All right, Pastor Joe Green's back. He says, scoring drive to first half. David Alex, a question about the Steelers' drive at the end of the first half. With approximately 33 seconds left, the right defensive end of the Jags leaves early and is offsides. Then our left tackle, Dan Moore, gets called for holding. The penalties are ruled as offsetting. He says, what the heck? How is that possible? I don't know if I went back and I haven't.
That was the touchdown to Deontay.
Right. I haven't re-examined that.
Yeah, well, it was the right DN jumped and they called him for offsides, and then Moore held him because the guy was offsides.
Right.
And they negated and had to redo the down. Right. So I know Charlie Batch made a comment about that.
Yeah, he's trying to, I guess, go chicken and egg, right?
Yeah, I get that, but it's the rule, and it's pretty unusual to see that. So, move on from that.
Daryl Munden writes in, what's up, David Alex? Daryl Munden from Virginia here. He says, I'm going to get right to it. He says, Ben Snell football isn't in the run game at all. Now, in special teams, he's a beast. The way he plays the ball has me wondering on a switch to inside linebacker. He says anything seems better than Bush. And is there any way we could see a package Bush and maybe a third or something like that for Roquan Smith? He says, I know the Jags have a stout front seven, but this line is supposed to be a run protection line, he says, right? No matter the quarterback, it's going to be hard for them to get going behind this awfulness. Thanks for your time, fellas. He says, and Mason played great in the second half to all the Twitter and Facebook. Me putting on Twitter talking about, well, go ahead and trade Mason. People view that as me hating. Have I been a Mason hater at any point throughout this, Alex? My thoughts now is Mason's basically a sitting duck now. Why not free him up and let him go show what he can do maybe in another organization? I don't hate. I have been as objective as they come on more so than probably anybody you'll find out there. In fact, Alex at one point never wanted to see him take another snap again or something along those lines, right? Yeah,
I've been as critical of Rudolph as anybody.
A lot more than I have been.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think you've hated him. And really, you saying trade him isn't saying you hate him. It's like, hey, he can probably play. It just won't be in Pittsburgh. It's just reading the writing on the wall, which,
right.
I mean, I agree with you. If I was Omar Khan, I'd be trying to trade Mason Rudolph right now.
Look, I mean, if you know that he's going to be your number 3 right now, and you can save $3 million in cap space, now look, would I dump him for a 7th? 7th or 6th? Probably not. I mean, I'd drive the price up on him, throughout this, because a quarterback somewhere is going to go down at some point, and the trade deadline is November 1st. So if I can't get what I want to get right now, Mason will just have to deal with it until November 1st rolls around. But by then, a better deal should surface. But I don't hate them all. I just think that it's in the best interest for all parties involved at this point, and especially if Kenny's going to be your number 2.
Mhm.
That because look, folks. I mean, people are saying, well, you know what happened back a couple years ago, yada yada. Okay, fine. If this team gets to a number third quarterback, they're not going to the playoffs, right?
Yeah, no, I understand. They almost did in 19, though. I mean, they were 8-5.
I know, but I
get your point.
You know what I'm saying?
It's a stronger North. Yeah,
right. Lightning striking twice and all like that. I mean, I'm not going to live in my fears that way. In fact, it's been an old principle of obviously of Kevin Colbert to try to normally keep 3 quarterbacks. I mean, get with the times now,
Mm-hmm.
And now I do realize that, somebody's got to be inactive, but in the same breath, I'd much rather on a week-to-week basis have more of a choice of a position player than I do of automatically pencil in a number 3 quarterback to be your inactive, one of your inactives,
And Rudolph Nick Mullins, we just saw a quarterback trade, actually. Minnesota getting backup quarterback in Nick Mullins. He went for a conditional 7th. I believe that condition is Nick Mullins must, I think, be on the roster for a game. So it's essentially a 7th-round pick. He'll fulfill that condition, I'm sure, by week 1. So, I mean, Rudolph is going to get more than Mullins, you would think.
Right.
So he should get at least, I think a 6 is what you would get Mason Rudolph for. Maybe a 5th at most.
Look, if anything, this preseason, I think Mason Rudolph's increased his value some,
Yeah. I mean, he's got good tape. And again, pro scouts around the league, their job is to watch tape on these guys. And they're probably aware that Rudolph is having a nice summer.
And we'll see how much he plays in this finale now and all. So now, as far as the other, Benny Snell's not going to get moved to linebacker anytime soon. He says if there's any way we could package Bush and maybe a 3rd or something for like Roquan Smith. I mean, I get it, I guess, but if Bush's value right now has got to be so low. That's almost like a throw-in to me at this point, especially with his salary and being fully guaranteed and all like that. I mean, does the team really want to take that on? They almost might say, we'll make the deal if you keep. No, just give us the 3rd.
Right. It's probably like some.
No, you shouldn't. You shouldn't have.
It's the old joke of probably some establishments you've been in before. It's $10 to get in, $20 to get out, like kind of one of those things. Yeah, that's kind of what it is for Devin Bush.
How do you know? You've been talking to.
I've been hanging around you enough. No, that
most of my old friends are dead now. Is that surprising?
If you listen to the live stream, everyone knows I'm going to call Dave Cinnamon from now on, and I'm Desiree. But watch the live stream to get the context. And Roquan Smith, by the way, he's said he's going to play out his contract. He was having issues because he represents himself, so it's hard for teams to contact him. So there was a big mess there. He's going to stay in Chicago this year. So I think any of those ideas were very remote to begin with, but they're now officially dead.
All right, Daryl. Thanks for the email there. One more from Zachary Prosba. He says, keep it simple here. Does preseason week 3 determine who is the starter week 1 between Mitch and Pickett? Do you view, I guess, can you foreseeably see what happens Sunday night as determining if Mitch or Pickett starts? Now, Mike Tomlin will have you believe that's the case, I guess.
I feel like the media ran with his comments a bit too much. I think because he was basically saying like the 3rd game, this last game is going to determine a lot. And somebody said, well, does that apply for the quarterbacks? And I don't know. It didn't feel like he was leaving that door as open as the media is making it out to be. I think the only way that Pickett starts week one is if Trubisky starts in bombs and Pickett goes in and has another at least good to great game. If that happens, then maybe. But again, to your point, it's been Trubisky's job to lose. He has not lost it. And I think Trubisky's going to be the guy.
I do as well, too. I think Mitch would really have to play bad and for multiple quarters as well, too. And I'm not convinced he's going to get all. If he does play, I'm not convinced he's going to play all that much.
How many series has he played in the first two games? It was 3 against Jacksonville. How many was it against Seattle? Just 2, wasn't it?
I thought it was 2, wasn't it? Because they didn't have a lot of possessions, period, in early.
So he's not going to play. He's not going to play the whole first half of this game. You wouldn't think if he's playing 2 and 3 in the tune-up in the opener.
I mean, if he does, you better put the other guys out there with him, the Deontay's and the Claypools and the Pickens.
That's a good point. So I think Trubisky probably plays 2 to 3 series, and I don't think he's going to be terrible enough in that time to lose the job.
Zach, I guess it's not unthinkable right now to have a scenario where if Mitch bombs and Pickett comes in and just lights it up, that it could change their mind. But from where I sit right now, it just feels like it's going to be Mitch, regardless of what happens here.
And I don't know if it's as relevant now, but remember the whole Jay Glazer comments of Mike Tomlin's not starting a rookie. I mean, Pickett doesn't always feel like a rookie, but Glazer knows Tomlin as well as anybody, and he's been pretty convinced it's Trubisky. So I'll take him at his word.
All right.
Anything else, Steve? Any other emails?
I think that's got us, and it's got us right. Imagine that. We're right at about the hour and a half mark, I think. When did we start, Alex?
9:40 something, 9:43.
All right, so we're a little over an hour and a half, I guess.
Hopefully, my voice was not too grating. I snuck onto Reddit today, and some people hate my voice, which is fair. It's
better than what they say about me.
They didn't say anything about your voice. They just said I have an
annoying
voice.
They say I saw a thread not too long ago about the stuttering and all like that, and how hard it is to listen to. Look, I mean, I stutter. I'm aware that I stutter. I've stuttered for a while.
But you have a good voice. Like you have a genuinely. No, you seriously have better than mine.
I have a nails on chalkboard. I have a gravelly smoker's voice from all.
That's good. Gravelly is a good voice for a podcast. I think mine is very high pitched, very whiny, and I'm very sorry for that.
All right, let's put it out to the listeners there to email theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. Who has the better voice, Alex or myself, and how bad is my stuttering? All right, so we'll throw it. This is your opportunity to take some shots. Maybe we'll read a few of these on the Friday show. And get a few laughs out of them there. But within all that, let's see. You can follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Kozora. You can follow the show. My problem is my brain works so damn fast. Sometimes it gets out ahead of my mouth, and I'm trying to catch up because I'm trying to think too damn much and catch up. But if you notice when I do my that's why I have to write. Do you write your terrible takes out?
I do.
I do as well, too. I probably sound a lot better on my terrible takes. Now, of course, I have to chop up about.
What are the editing? What's the editing process like for
it's
that?
like a 15-minute clip that gets edited down to 3 minutes there because I start and stop all over the place there. But sometimes I can't even read my own bad writing on top of it there. But somehow we've managed to keep this little mom and pop blog running, chugging on down the track. So I guess several people still listen and read according to the numbers and all. But anyway, follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and want to donate to the cause, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button, upper right navigational bar. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site. See, I say it every show, so it just rolls off my tongue there. Ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the navigational bar upper right corner of that for $25 to get an ad-free version of the site. So until Friday, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.